Good day, I'm Vanessa Anel Gomez from BSET 2H, a second-year college student taking Bachelor of Secondary Education, major in Social Studies. Today, I'll be going to show my teaching demonstration. The topic that I am going to discuss is the indigenous people practices in the Philippines. At the end of the lesson, the students are expected to first, identify the different indigenous practices. Second, define the different indigenous practices. And third is to explain how these indigenous practices are important to our society. Okay, I will start the discussion by knowing the four indigenous practices. And these are the hunting, farming, handicrafts making, and traditional tattoo making. We know that the Philippines is made up of 7,641 islands with different cultural practices, beliefs, and tradition. And there are 7 main ethnic groups in the Philippines categorized as Ilocano, Pangasinense, Kapampangan, Tagalog, Bicolano, Bisaya, Moro, or Muslim. Okay, let us proceed to hunting. To begin with, most indigenous continue to hunt animals in the highlands as their primary source of income. An example of this is the Aita or Negritos, whose primary vocation is hunting. This is due to the fact that they are frequently situated in the mountains, and as a result of their isolation from society, they are not particularly abundant. However, unlike illegal hunters, these indigenous people can lawfully catch animals that are not prohibited from being caught because it has been a part of their culture from the beginning of time. Second is the farming. The best example that I could give on this one is the Banawe rice terraces. Ifugao farmers have been conserving crop diversity for decades by incorporating cultural traditions and beliefs into a farming strategy that is primarily focused on the world-famous Ifugao rice terraces. The Ifugao rice terraces are a very functional agricultural and ecological marvel that have been producing rice for generations, demonstrating ecosystem preservation and soil erosion control. It will be fascinating to see how indigenous people use these resources to preserve traditional rice varieties. A study was done to assess the Tiwali indigenous people's conservation techniques in Kiangan, Ifugao. The patterns of farming system, crops cultivated, cultural practices, and women's role were determined and associated with their conservation approaches. Based on interviews and focus group discussion, farmers still choose to cultivate traditional types that they have been producing since time immemorial for family usage. According to findings, only for economic reasons do they turn to lowland or contemporary variants. They farm as a community, with capable members of each household assisting one another with everything from field preparation to harvesting. When one type is discovered to perform well, or when a farmer loses a certain variety, they exchange seeds on a regular basis. The Banawe rice terraces have begun to develop a landscape of stunning beauty that reflects the unity among people and the environment. Okay, let's continue to handicrafts making. Indigenous crafts in the Philippines are handcrafted items made by ethnic or tribal communities. These are artworks that are purposeful in nature since they mirror the way of living in Tapas. This craft serves as a springboard for manual innovation with long-term social implications and uses. Handicrafts generate foreign cash profits for indigenous peoples as part of a survival strategy, and they can occasionally draw both customers and producers' attention to the values and ideas they represent. Weaving clothes. This is a life tradition that has been passed down from the generation to generation. Even if a threat of more practical and convenient mass production of fabric has already been established, this craft practice by the Cordillera tribes of the north has persisted since pre-colonial times. The indigenous utilized a backstrap loom to construct this, which results in a really well-done product made entirely by their hands. The piña cloth of Antique, for example, is a delicate and exquisite hand-woven cloth created from fibers derived from pineapple plant leaves. Barong Tagalog, the Philippine national costume for males, is a well-known product made from pineapple cloth. Weaving baskets. Baskets are mostly utilized in the daily lives of Cordillera residents to keep and store their food when they travel to the mountain terraces to farm lands. Baskets are useful to them in a variety of situations. They use them to carry grains, fish in streams, and hunt animals. Fish traps are form of bamboo baskets which vary in shape and size depending on the type of fish that they want to catch. These two are examples of crafts of indigenous people. Lastly, the traditional tattoo making. Apo Wangod is best known for doing traditional tattoo making. The tribal tattooing by Wangod is made primarily of charcoal and water. After it's been blended, a thorn from a citrus tree, either calamansi or pomelo, is tapped into the skin. Wangod will then connect the thorn to a 12-inch long bamboo pole and begin tapping it deep into your skin. She provides a selection of example designs from which you can choose. Your request will be softly relayed to Wangod by the villagers or your tour guide, and she will begin tapping your chosen design. Getting tattooed by Wangod requires a certain amount of bravery as the procedure might be unpleasant. Depending on your body tolerance, visitors are also urged to bring in some donations for your host, such as food, medicine, and matches, which are necessary for their daily survival. Indigenous people are significant in our culture because they regard themselves as part of the same system as the environment in which they live. Natural resources are treated as shared property and are treated with care. Many indigenous tribes contribute to climate change mitigation by preserving natural resources such as forests and rivers. Indigenous peoples have altered their way of life to fit with and appreciate their surroundings. Indigenous peoples' techniques in the mountains help to protect soil, decrease erosion, conserve water, and reduce disaster risk. Indigenous pastoralist tribes manage cattle grazing and crops in rangelands in a sustainable manner that protects biodiversity. This is the end of the lesson. I hope that you have learned something from me. Until our next meeting, thank you everyone for listening.